Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you here, and welcome to our October Pinal County Community College District Governing Board meeting. We will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Mr. David Orleorn to offer that for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Call to the public. No one has signed up for call to the public, and so we'll move to action items. Number 4, consideration of the consent agenda. All items that are listed with an asterisk are consent matters and will be passed with one vote unless a member of the governing board would like to extract one or more from the consent agenda. Otherwise, the chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move the consent agenda be accepted as presented.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Discussion. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda is passed. Informational items. Item number 8, policies for first reading. Dr. Jackie Elliott.
Good afternoon. Whoa. President Gibson, board members, faculty, and staff. Presented today on behalf of Vice President Brandy Bain is the policy first reading employee leaves and holiday policy revision. At this particular time, you have it in your board book. I'm happy to answer any questions. If I'm unable to, Irma has graciously offered to step up and answer some questions. Again, this is for the first reading.
Are there any questions from members of the governing board? No questions. The first reading is taking place. We'll look forward to seeing that on a future agenda for review and possible action. Next item on the informational items is, turning my page, report from Central Arizona College President, District Update, Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, President Gibson. First, I want to share with you that the college opened its second CAC Connect yesterday at Apache Junction. As you know, this is the educational partnership between the college and Pinal County High Schools that provides space within the high school for students to meet with advisors, academic programs, and recruiters during the school day. Last month, we opened the first CAC Connect at the Maricopa High School. Also, I would want to share that the college and SUNT partnership continues to garner attention nationally. As mentioned earlier, the college is working with Tarrant County Community College in Texas and Alamo Colleges in Texas to help them replicate our program. And even today, a large group from Granite Construction was on campus to hear more about our program. I also want to share with you that the college is working on a project with Futures Incorporated, which is a national organization. And the project is a pilot that will link student interest with career paths, educational programs, and employers, not just employment, but direct employers. So this is kind of an exciting project that we're working on with them. And then finally, I just want to note that our 50-year celebrations are still ongoing and continuing with great excitement and enthusiasm. This weekend, we will be at the fair on Friday, CAC Day at the Arizona State Fair is this Friday, and then Saturday is the 5K run. So if you haven't signed up yet, there's still time, I think. So those are my updates, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions? So We're nominating Mr. Miller here to be in the 5K run to represent all 5 of us. Are you ready? I'm ready. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else, Dr. Elliott, that you'd like to report on?
No,
Very good.
thank you.
Business Affairs Report, Mr. Waka.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, governing board members, Madam President, Madam Secretary, colleagues, and any guests today. 2 items on your agenda, the monthly budget report and also the awarded bids over $20,000. First one is the budget. This is for the month of August of 2019, so that's 2 months into our new fiscal year. August 2019 shows the district's general fund expenditures are at about 10.86% of the total budget, which is a slight increase of 0.04% from August of a year ago, which was at 10.82%. You have both the financial numbers and the graphs included in your packet. And once again, this is for August 31st, and everything is pretty much in line outside, if you notice, on both the operating funds and the auxiliary funds, the tuition and fees revenue. There is more reported on last year's year-to-date versus this year's, and that's due to the new system and how we are recognizing the revenue. So in a few months, when both systems are in the same apples-to-apples comparison, you'll see an evening out of the year-to-date actuals for all of the line items for both not only revenues, but expenditures. The only thing impacted at the moment is the tuition and fees. So all other revenue lines, and as you see, the expenditure lines are in target with the previous year. Happy to answer any questions you may have on the financials.
Questions? You're comfortable that we are on target for expenditures similar to last year? There's been no anomalies that have raised their heads that we need to be aware of?
None at the first quarter that we've ended at this point in time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second item is the awarded purchases over $20,000. And we do have 12 of them this month. The first one is continued banner support. That's Campus Consortium, Cleveland, Ohio, $22,555, and that is to purchase the DBA support, which is database administration support for our old system, that old banner system, because we do still access historical information. So that is a fee that we do have to pay in order to be able to still access that system. And I presume we will probably be needing to access that another year or two until we make the decision to completely pull the plug on the old system. Second item, bleachers for softball field, Norcon Industries, Tempe, Arizona, $48,299. That is bleachers for the softball field. Next one, server for nursing lab in Wakefield 163, Dimension Data, Charlotte, North Carolina, $27,145.54. That is a server that is being placed in a nursing lab, and that is with funds from the Perkins grant. Next one, professional services for the new ERP, Campus Management Corporation, Boca Raton, Florida, $45,600. That will be our annual fee that we pay for professional services of Nexus-related items and integration. Next one is student athlete insurance, Relation Insurance Services, Salt Lake City, Utah, $86,412. That is to purchase for fiscal year 20 the basic and the catastrophic coverage for athletic insurance. Next one, Creative Arts Mac Lab computer upgrade, Apple computers out of Austin, Texas, $40,437. Those are new computers that have been purchased for the Signal Peak campus for the Mac Lab. Phase 2 of the Union AV upgrade, Exhibit 1 Corporation, Phoenix, Arizona, $31,705. That is to purchase and upgrade the AV equipment for the I building. And the next one is Progress ID card implementation. Gray Bar out of Clayton, Missouri, $24,555. That is to purchase the smart ID cards for the district. Next one, district-wide staff computer upgrades. Dell Computers, Round Rock, Texas, $30,713. That is to purchase replacement computers for the district. Police video wall upgrades. Exhibit 1 Corporation, Phoenix, Arizona, $46,621. That is to purchase equipment for the video wall that is located in the police department. 2 more. The next one is temporary employees, Robert Half, Los Angeles, California, in the amount of $21,000. That is to create an open purchase order for temp employees from Robert Half. And the last one is new entrance on the east side at Maricopa campus, Ace Asphalt of Arizona Incorporated, Phoenix, Arizona, $69,561. And that is to contract for creating a new entrance at the Maricopa campus. We will now be working on having 2 entrances in and out of the Maricopa campus. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
One.
Please, Mr. Miller.
Yes, Mr. Walker, the temporary employees, what's the scope of that? Or is it just undefined?
It is an open purchase order. I believe it's primarily for the finance office. We have 2 temporary employees right now in the finance department.
Okay.
Just one question, and it's probably a question that you've answered a million times, but perhaps you could do it one more time for me. And that is, I note that obviously well, not all, but most of the listed items are well under budget. Some have budgeted dollars that are fairly significant, over $1 million, and yet the expenditures were relatively small. For example, the bleachers for the softball field and the asphalt for the Maricopa parking lots. Could you just kind of explain to me what the reasoning is for having such a large budget and a small expenditure?
It is just the timing of when things are purchased. Another good example is the Dell computers. We don't purchase all Dell computers and have them shipped in, say, July 1st of the fiscal year. They come in as the IT department is able to go out to all the campuses and install and replace, so they're delivered periodically throughout the fiscal year. The one on the bleachers, Norcon Industries, we're also working on the baseball field, so you'll see in the upcoming months there will be work scheduled for the baseball field. The other one you mentioned is the Maricopa campus. That is the first payment that's going to Ace Asphalt as they begin their work in permitting and grading and so forth.
So that's
with
just
new
the
entrance.
first payment. So what we're seeing is a total budget and then incremental expenditures till we reach that budget.
Correct. And just to point out further, the total budget is not going to be $1.1 million to do a new entrance at the Maricopa campus. The work on the Maricopa campus is being taken out of this particular budget, which is a construction budget. I believe that the project at Maricopa is less than $100,000, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't see Ernest is there, less than $100,000. But the budget amount is not just for that project; it's multiple projects that are in that budget.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate the help. Next item on the agenda is the Guided Pathways Progress Report. Developmental Education. Please, thank you. I always call on the wrong person, so that's why thank you.
All right. Okay, great. Thanks. Can you hear me? Oops. I noticed he'd get close and get loud. Is this good right here? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, President Gibson, Governing Board, Dr. Elliott, colleagues and community. We wanted to give you an update on the developmental element team for the Guided Pathways. So we have a total of 22 members on our team. The co-chairs are Kai, Carissa, and myself, and we were formed last year. We also are working with the honors programs. They want students as one of their projects to serve on the committee. And we're working on going out to Dev Ed students and have them as part of it since they've been through the classes. So we began when we started meeting last year by identifying the problem. And when I say problem, we feel like DevEd is good at CAC, but studies nationwide and at CAC show us that it's not working great. So what can we do to make it work better? So we looked at what is not working well, and studies show that students are spending too much time in developmental education. They're not completing a 2-year degree or certificate within 3 to 4 years. And this is nationwide. This isn't just at CAC. Many DevEd students have poor retention rates and do not complete their course of study due to many factors, which include a lack of readiness skills and study skills, which we as DevEd teachers, we really try to address those skills, and that's part of what we teach. Students are not always appropriately placed into DevEd courses. This is also a problem nationwide. And so we decided to tackle that problem first last year. We thought if we focus on one thing and kind of get that going, then we would look at the other factors. So currently we have the AccuPlacer Next Gen test that students take, and it places them into DevEd. We do try to do certain steps to make sure they're right placed, but when you have students in your DevEd class, they will tell you, if I would have known that I had to take this class, I would have taken the test more seriously. So, and usually the first week of classes, we can kind of do some things to right place them, but after that, we really can't. So if they tell us that a couple weeks into the class, there's really not a lot that we can do. And students are not always being channeled appropriately into courses. For example, I might have a student that doesn't speak any English at all, and they probably should have taken some ESL classes before taking the DevEd classes, and then they would have been more successful. So channeling those students correctly. A lot of our students, well, not a lot, but some students haven't even earned their GED yet, and they should do that first, and then maybe they wouldn't even need the DevEd classes. So channeling them correctly. We have in the past 5 years have been doing different things to address the DevEd problems. For example, in the reading classes, when 5 years ago, the sequence, if they tested into the lowest level reading, at that time it was reading 90, it was 11 classes to satisfy the reading requirement. We got rid of the lowest level. We have 2 levels of reading, and we cut the amount of credits down from 11 down to 6. So we've almost cut those in half. So they take 2 reading classes if they tested in at that lowest level. We rearticulated Reading 100 so that it's transferable as an elective at all 3 state universities. So students have more incentive to do well in the class. Reading 100 is now a co-requisite to most college level courses, which I love because before Reading 100 was a roadblock. If they didn't pass it, they couldn't take any college level classes. And so it was a lot of stress on the teachers to, say, oh, you're not going to pass and you're going to have to do another semester with DevEd courses before you can go on. So that was a good change to make. In the English department, they created the OUT program, which is the Accelerated Learning Program. So students can take their developmental English along with their regular English and be done in 1 semester. I know Karen Henhetty, the chair of the Literary Arts and Languages, has looked at some studies, and it's really working. The Math Redesign team has been meeting for the past 2 years to revise the DevEd math classes, and Kaya's going to talk more in depth about that. They've put a lot of time in. And boot camps are being done for reading, English, and math to try to get students to test out of DevEd or at least test into a higher DevEd class. And those have been working as well. So there are some good things happening. So a nationwide trend now for placing students in DevEd is something called multiple measures. So we used to only look at their AccuPlacer score, and what we were seeing is there's too many students in DevEd. The percentage of students in DevEd is really high. So nationwide, they started doing different things. Multiple measures is where you're cross-referencing a couple different measures rather than relying just on that one score. So we met as the team last spring. We met on a Friday. We divided into teams. Each team researched what's happening in the state, what's happening nationwide, what's some of the statistics, what are other colleges doing. And then we came back together and shared that. And we sent out a survey to the team. What do we want to see that happen? So the team decided that we need to start using multiple measures as a cross-reference to make sure they're getting into the right course. We are going to start doing that this spring. So the advisors have asked, have your multiple measures charts ready by December so we can start doing it. Math has actually already started doing it. They started last spring, so they're able to gain some data on that and see how it's working. So we will have those ready. And like I said, math is already doing it. English and reading will have theirs ready by December to do it. So nationwide, some colleges nationwide are only relying on high school GPA 3.0. You don't have to take reading. We decided as our team not to do that because we feel like that's a single measure once again. So you went from the single measure of AccuPlacer, now you're only looking at high school GPA. And the research has shown that if you're going to do multiple measures, you really have to look at a couple different measures for it to work. Our next steps that we met this fall, and we're looking at what do we want to focus on now. So now we're going to look at another nationwide trend, which is contextualizing and restructuring DevEd. We're just in the exploratory phase. Dr. Elliott has put us in contact with a college that is doing this. They've made it different. So how it looks is that DevEd is not a separate entity. It is embedded into college level classes. It may be in the form of a lab where the DevEd teacher works with the college, the professors, and they support them. Maybe it's a lab, maybe it's a computer generated program or something like that. But DevEd is starting to look real different. Like I said, it's contextualized rather than being a separate entity. So we are starting to explore that to see what that could look like at CAC. So I will turn it over to Kai so he can share more specifically what math is doing.
Good afternoon, President Gibson, members of the board, and Dr. Elliott and Ms. Hernandez and everybody. My name is Kai Chung. I'm a faculty member in the math division. We've done a lot of exciting things in the math department the past few years, but I'm here to focus on our developmental program. All right, so first of all, math faculty don't get invited to the board meeting to speak often, so I have a lot of things I want to share, but I try to cut down on the content, but if I'll go overboard, somebody feel free to come up and take away my mic. All right, so so we're focusing on our developmental program, and so we, the math division, use a three-pronged approach to reform our developmental program. And the first one is to focus on our boot camps. This is something that we've done for the past, I would say, 3+ years. And the original intent was that, we've got students, they just recently finished high school, and yet when they come over here, they, for some reason, are unable to demonstrate the skills and knowledge that they obtain in their high school classes. So it was very often that we have students that come to us on the first day of the semester, and they say that, well, I already had pre-calc in high school, and yet I'm in your basic math. So we thought something is not quite right here. So for various reasons, whether it's been a while since they had their last math class, or whether, they just weren't prepared to take the placement test, or, they just didn't take the placement test seriously, we just felt that we needed to find a way to help our students place better, do better on the placement test, so they're in a class that, where they can really be challenged and they can really learn. So we came up with the idea of having the math boot camp. So basically, this is a 1-week program, and students meet 4 days a week. I believe it's 6 hours a day, so it's pretty intensive. The purpose is for them to test into the class they should that they have the skills for. So it's not so much that, well, we just want them to be in a first level college level course. If they have pre-calc in high school, we want them to come and so they can test into calculus, So if they had very little math in high school, then perhaps, the highest level of DevEd is appropriate for them. So this, again, is a free program to our students, no tuition. They don't have to buy any books or supplies. This is instructor-led, so every workshop is led by at least one instructor. Usually we have 2 or more. And like I mentioned, that it lasts a year. It lasts a week. And this is available district-wide. Right now, it's almost we almost have one every month. The first year that we did this, the effectiveness wasn't really all that high. So I would say only about 30 to 40% of the participants were able to improve 1 or more levels. But in our most recent cohort, about 68% of the participants were able to move up 1 or more levels. So wherever they tested before, originally, they came and they participated in the boot camp, and they were able to move up at least 1, possibly more. So these bar graphs, hopefully you can see they're really small. You can see that many of our students actually moved up 2 or more levels. So that's really encouraging. So right now we're going to try to promote this so that more students are aware of this opportunity. Like I said, we have this almost every month now. We're also thinking about, perhaps we should have on-demand boot camps. So, if we need to have more boot camps a month, we can do that. We're also going to try to collaborate with high schools. So if they feel like there's a demand, they have students that are interested in coming here, they need to do the placement test, maybe we can offer this at the high school, wherever they're at. All right, so another thing that we want to look into, or that we have done quite a bit of work to help our students to place into appropriate classes, is by looking at multiple measures. So right here in this PowerPoint slide, I separated our measures into two categories. One is single measures, and the other one is multiple measures. So for the single measures, students can qualify for a class by any of those things. Obviously, if they took the placement test, then based on the score, then they can be placed into a math class. Another way they can get into a math class is if they took the ACT test, the SAT, or if they did the GED. So by having certain test results, that also can help us to place them into an appropriate class. If they took an AP class in high school, and they took the AP test, by sharing their results with us, that can also give us a glimpse of how to best place them. And obviously, if they had another math class at a different college, we take a look at their transcript, and that will help us to place them as well. And the last way they can get into a class is by telling us that they're aware that they don't quite meet the prereq for a class, but they are willing to work extra hard and whatnot. So by filling out the against advice form, and they can pretty much self-place themselves. Okay, and then the other column is multiple measures, and this is a very popular topic these days, as Mary mentioned. This is something that our task force team has been working on, but our department has looked at different, combining different measures, and hopefully that will give us a more holistic view of where a student is at mathematically. So what we want to do is we want to first look at their IQ placer, because that really gives us an idea, a basic idea of where they're at mathematically. The high school GPA and the math GPA, we also look at those two things because they speak to students, their work ethic, motivation, and things like that. So we take a look at all those 3 things, and then from there we make a determination. So the way we usually go about doing this is that if they meet the certain high school GPA and math GPA threshold, then we are going to bump them up 1 level higher than what their IQ placer score would place them normally. So we realize that many community colleges nationwide are relying on just the high school GPA alone or math GPA alone. But we feel like, for our students in Pinal County, it's better to be a little bit on the conservative side because, if you throw a student into a math class where it's just way beyond their ability, then, the frustration sets in and then they just give up. So it's better to be a little bit conservative and just move them up one level and let's see how that goes. And so this is the first year that we've implemented multiple measures, and so we're hoping to collect some data at the end of the semester to see how they perform in their classes, and along with their GPAs and their math GPAs from their high schools, and see whether we can tweak some of these thresholds, some of these numbers, or perhaps we can even consider in the future just to place them just by their high school GPA or their math GPA, just with that. Another multiple measure that we are implementing is just looking at their AccuPlacer score plus their AZ Merit Algebra 2 results. So we just want to look at, again, just look at their math knowledge and see where is the best way to, or what's the best class to place them. So same thing. We will look at their IQ placement score. And so if they have certain AZ Merit results, we will bump them up one level. Okay. And then for the future, we are also considering, like I was saying, that their high school GPA or their math GPA, maybe that could be considered for use as a single measure. Perhaps their prior high school math coursework. So if they took pre-calc in high school, perhaps with a certain grade, we can place them into the next class up here at CAC, and that's a possibility. Whatever things we implement, we always want to look at, well, so is this effective? So we want to look at our data analysis. So the question is, well, okay, so how are we going to go about collecting data, and who's going to be doing the evaluation and all those things? So those are things that we are currently discussing, and as more data comes in, then we can take our next step forward. Okay. All right, so this is very exciting. Okay, this is the developmental math redesign. So about a year ago, our department put together a team. We call this DIRT. It's Developmental Redesign Team. Our focus was to look at our developmental courses and see how we can streamline, condense, accelerate our students so that they can be moved on to their first gateway course. And so let me just go to this next slide right here and give you a comparison of what our new DevEd is versus our traditional DevEd. So we look at our students according to what's the ultimate math class they need. So most of our students can be broken down into these 5 categories. So we've got our non-STEM, our business track, our STEM track, and our vocational. We've got 2 tracks. So let me just go ahead and explain to you. Just take the non-STEM as an example. Okay. Currently, our DevEd program consists of actually four levels of DevEd. We've got Math OA2, OA6, 092, and 121. So for the non-STEM students, in order for them to get into their AJAC course, which is Math 141, they would need to take 3 DevEd courses before they can get into Math 141. Now, our redesign team, we actually looked at all these courses and we asked ourselves, do our students really need all that information before they get into Math 141? Or can we consolidate, can we streamline, can we take out certain overlaps so that they just have whatever, the basic essential skills and knowledge to be successful in 141. So we came up with 2 foundation classes. One is called Math OA7, we call that Foundation 1. So for non-STEM students, they just need to take that, Math 187, and then their next stop is Math 141. So that is just one Dev Ed course. Okay, let me go over to the third track, which is the STEM track, just so you can see a before and after comparison. So as I mentioned, right now, for students to get into calculus, they have to do 4 levels of Dev Ed. So that's OA2, Math OA6, 092, and 121. And then they get into college algebra, which is 151, and then 182, and then which is trig, and then they get into 221, which is calculus. And I don't know about you, but that's quite a few of math classes. Quite a few of math classes, quite a bit of tuition, and all the fees and supplies and all that. So after the 2 foundation classes, then they do, okay, so they go Math OA7, Math 097, and then from there, if they want to do the accelerated pace, then they will do the Math 187, which is what we call pre-calculus, or if they want to slow down a little bit, they can do college algebra, which is Math 151, followed by trigonometry, Math 182, and then they're in calculus. So we've cut down quite a bit, and then Math 087, let me just speak to that for a minute. It is basically just teaching students how to add, subtract, multiply, divide numbers, along with looking at some, graphs and charts and all that. So it's really not algebra based, So if a student has just, even junior high math, then they can actually start at Math 097. And, so that's one level of Dev Ed, and then they're at either college algebra or pre-calc. So, yeah, so we've cut this down quite a bit. For the 2 VOTEC tracks, it just depends on whether they need Math 106 or they need Math 118. So we realized that we still have, some work that we can do. Like, for example, I'm looking to see if there's a way that we can consolidate Math OA2 and Math OA6 into Foundation 087, so they can go into Math 118. Or maybe we can even just let them take Math 118 directly without having to go through Math 087, So that is something that, we are going to look into in this next coming year and see if that's an area that we can continue to work on. Okay. All right. So this is my last slide, so hang in there. We're almost done. All right. So looking ahead, okay, these are the things that we need to work on, not just next year, but I would say next semester. And the first thing is our foundation classes again. Right now, our foundation classes are designed to be very hands-on. So students, they need to be in the classroom. They need to be working on activities and, discussions and whatnot, So we need to look at how is this going to be for our online population, because we do have students that for various reasons they just cannot be on the campus to take the, the hands-on 087 and 097 classes, So that is something that we are going to decide how we are going to pilot, hopefully in the spring, and then in fall 2020, we can have these foundation classes in all 4 modalities. And then we also need to look at how is it that how we can phase out our traditional Dev Ed, because we have students that came here and they thought that you need to do OA2, all these 4 levels of Dev Ed, for various reasons, maybe that's what they want to do. But so we want to give them a way that they can finish that particular pathway if they so choose. If they want to go and switch over to the accelerated foundation classes, and that would be great. So for our, for students that they still want the traditional Dev Ed, we want to just give an opportunity to finish, those Dev Ed. And so again, how are we going to phase them out gradually so that it won't just catch them by surprise. So that is something that we are actually going to talk about next week with our redesign team. And then number 3, we're going to have to evaluate our placement policy, and that includes our multiple measures, looking at our data, our student course performance this semester, and then, compare with the GPA threshold that we set for them and see if we can do some tweaking and whatnot. And then the last one is to streamline DevEd for VOTEC further if it's possible. Okay. All right. I think I'm finished. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Mr. Miller.
I do. Yep, thank you. Okay, so just to clarify the boot camp students, because both of you mentioned the boot camp, is that just CAC students? Is it only ones that have taken the placement test, the IQ test? Or is it open to anybody in Pinal County?
It's open to anybody in Pinal County. In fact, we have had students who just wanted to participate so they can use it to get them to prepare for the HESI exam for nursing. And I think we also have had students who wanted to use this to help them get ready for their GED. So yeah, but this is open to anybody in Pinal County. But they do have to register. At least that's the way it goes for the math department. They have to register for boot camp as a class.
Okay, so it's in the catalog or it's online. It's not publishing that.
It is in our class schedule.
Okay.
Yes, so they can look it up. In fact, we have one starting in November. Yes.
Okay, and I'd only ask this question of a math professor, but on the multiple measures, are you working on developing an algorithm for the couple of the components or three components to kind of evaluate what that final number would be? Because you mentioned threshold, and then you said that you were trying to figure out exactly what, if you could eliminate a couple, like for GPA, for an example. So
right.
kind of talk about that
Yes.
process.
Okay. So I don't, because I was not on the team that set the GPA thresholds. But our goal is to look at to track all the students that got bumped up by the multiple measure and compare with their GPA, and we are hoping to be able to see some kind of like pattern correlation and say, okay, so if somebody got a C or better, what was their GPA, and so hopefully from there we can adjust that GPA threshold. So that's the tweaking, that's the data analysis that we're thinking about.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, Mary had said that this is a nationwide issue, and getting DevEd, kind of people in the right classes. Are we working with any sister colleges that are experiencing the same thing, sharing data and that sort of thing?
Yeah, when we met on that Friday and we did our study, we looked at what all the Arizona colleges are doing. So, Pima, Maricopa, we each checked at what they were doing. We're kind of like in reading and English, we like Pima's model the best. So we've been working with them, emailing back and forth. How did you set this? One thing I've noticed that when you look at their scores that we looked at last spring and where they place students, I just went back in and looked and they've changed. So when you talk about the algorithm for placing them, I think you try to do that and you look, and then Pima and the other schools obviously thought this isn't working, so they adjusted them. So it seems like until they get a good fit, they're looking at it, looking at data, adjusting. So, and that's probably what we're going to do when we roll it out in the spring. We'll definitely, work with IR to get data, see how it's working, and math will be doing the same thing. So.
Right. Before this is for the math department. Before we set our GPA thresholds, we actually met with other Arizona Community College math departments. We looked at what because many of them are already doing this. So we looked at how they're doing it, whether they're doing multiple single measures or multiple measures. So if they're doing GPA, we looked at what what was the number that you guys used. We also looked at some schools in California, some schools in Texas. So seems like everybody was doing different things. But one thing, like Mary mentioned, that they all have in common is that they all eventually they raised their GPA. So that just tells us that perhaps they were a little bit too optimistic initially, and they realized that having a little bit slightly lower GPA, even though it could place students a little bit higher, maybe those students that are at the bottom, they were not successful. So they raised their GPA threshold a little bit more. So that's why we feel like, well, for us, it's better to be conservative and not, throw them into calculus when they're still counting on their hands.
We've
Yeah.
also reached out to the local high schools,
Yeah.
like Union and Post and Butte, to see what their average GPA scores are.
Mhm.
So they responded. They're getting that information together with us, so that'll help us as we set our GPA score cutoffs.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? So, Mary, I'm traumatized here. Many decades ago, I took English 100 and 101. It was 101 and 102 in that particular college. And I was absolutely convinced after those two courses that I was not cut out for college. I mean, I came out of that class just dragged, but I learned so much from it. I acknowledge that. And it was a basis for the rest of my. How in the world did I get it right that we are combining 100 with 101 in an accelerated program and doing it in one semester? Did I hear that right?
Yes, that's correct. And it's kind of like contextualizing the Dev Ed portion of it. So how that looks is you have the 101 class, and the 100 students in the 101 meet in the one class. And then afterwards, 12 of the 100 students. So they come for the 100 portion, which really looks kind of like a lab. So whatever writing assignment they're doing in the 101, they can really go more into depth in the 100 in a smaller group setting and get that extra help. And they're still hitting the outcomes of English 100, but they're doing it as a support measure. So it works really well.
Wow.
It seems like a lot. It would be 6
I'm
credits of
I'm going to get my head around that, but that sounds really interesting. Really interesting.
There's still a 102.
Oh,
So they're still taking 2 semesters, but they're working together.
Like, it's the developmental part. It's the 100.
Ah,
You might not have that. Most students who test college ready do 101 then 102.
got it.
Students who don't are college ready test 100 and 101 together.
Got it.
And then that's the supplemental instruction. So you still have a whole year.
I'll probably wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about that. Thank you for helping me out on that. Appreciate that. Great report. Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Look forward to the next one. 2 semesters working together. That sounds exciting. Monitoring reports, Dr. Cardenas and Dr. Gilliland.
All right. President Gibson, governing board members, Dr. Elliott, colleagues, students, and guests. This is our October version of the monitoring reports. And the section that I'm going to cover, there are 4 different sections that are all around enrollment, so varying populations that we have at the college. So the 4 that we have, I was waiting, sorry. The 4 different areas that we have are the percentage of college-going students, which is our students right out of high school that are ready to come to college, the percentage of underserved students who enroll at CAC across the district, our overall enrollment numbers, and FTSE is our full-time student equivalent. And then we'll also look at the high school student enrollment. So the enrollment at our colleges while students are still enrolled in high school. So those are the 4 areas that I'm gonna cover today prior to Dr. Gilliland coming up. So the first is our, and these are all focused on access. So what type of access do these different student populations have? And then what is the enrollment that is connected to those areas? So the first is ensuring that all Pinal County residents have access to high quality, innovative educational programs and opportunities for advanced degrees. And 2.1 is, as I mentioned, the percentage of college going students. So like I said, these are the students who are recent high school graduates who come to our colleges. And if you take a look, the students enrolled, there was a target set of 40% for our 2018 2021 strategic plan. And the trends indicate that CAC has really been pretty stable in that area. We've been between 26 and 27% consistently. If you take a look at the state numbers, the Arizona community colleges have been right around 34%. So the state as a whole is capturing about 34% of the college-going students. Looking at CAC, we're capturing about 26% of the college-going students. And looking nationally, so as a nation, about 23% of the students who are college-ready are being captured at community colleges. So although we do have work to do in comparison to the numbers that are where we're looking at the state, we are higher than the national average. And I am going to go into some specific things towards the end that we're working on related to enrollment and offering additional access to students and different programs that are happening. But I'll move on quickly to the next to see the next population. So 2.2 is looking at the number of our underserved students that are enrolling in our colleges. And for this, we have a target of 60%. You'll see the yellow line at the top. So an increase in the numbers is moving in the right direction. So you can definitely see with the green bar that CAC is higher than both the state and the national averages when it comes to enrolling underserved populations of students. And this is really important for us, especially when we go on to the next graph and see the decline in enrollment that we've had and the decline that the nation has seen in enrollment. We are still continuing to serve a higher number of students who are underrepresented. So that is definitely a positive for CAC and the types of students and, again, those populations that we're bringing into our classes. The next is looking at the overall enrollment, or FTSE, so our full-time student equivalent. The board set a target of 5,775 students for our full-time enrollment. And not only has CAC seen a decline and the state seen a decline, but also the nation has seen a decline over the last almost 10 years. So it's widely known through both Department of Education and National Student Clearinghouse that the Great Recession in 2007 and 2009 really led to a dramatic spike in our enrollment. And if you recall our enrollment periods during those times, we saw higher numbers than we've ever seen at the college. And since then, and the recovery in 2010 for our economy, we've seen about a 3% annual decline across the nation. And again, Arizona and CAC have seen that decline as well. It is likely that will continue to be the trend, being that we do have a stable economy and low employment rates, which is what typically dictates how we project our enrollment will be. Taking a look at those numbers, though, as I indicated before, we are, I don't know why I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. We will continue to see that decline as indicated. I'm going to go on to the next slide, and this is looking at, you'll notice it's a change from what we saw last year. So if you recall, last year as we reported our monitoring reports, we were looking specifically at dual enrollment and the enrollment that we had in our dual enrollment program. So these are students who are taking classes at CAC who are currently in high school. And one of the things that we noticed and that we indicated in that report was it really didn't tell a full picture of our high school population at CAC. We are the only college that has an early college program, a very robust early college program, where we have many of our students who might not participate in dual enrollment at their high school, but they participate as high school students through early college on our campus. And we've seen a great return and great success with students who have been in those programs. So it was determined as we decided how to move forward, and the governing board decided to actually look at our high school program combined to see how many students that we're serving. So as you'll see, last year we were serving 857 individual high school students, whether that be through dual enrollment, again, on their campus, or through early college on one of our campuses. And this year we're serving 877 students that are in our high schools. So we've definitely seen an increase there and have certainly more room to grow to get toward our goal of 1,000 students. So the types of things that I wanted to focus on, I started to break these apart and really give you recent improvements and planned improvements based on each of those populations. And what I started to realize was so much of it was combined, and there were so many things that really will help increase our access and enrollment for all of our students that I thought I would keep them together. So recent improvements that we've seen, Dr. Elliott mentioned yesterday, was the second of our CAC Connect programs, and these have been a combination of the administration at the high schools, working with our recruiters and our campus directors. Carissa played a huge role in the partnership, Carissa Payfield, in the partnership along with Hazel Rossi and the AJ High School to develop the partnership that started yesterday, which really gives us a place on campus. I was so impressed with the fact that the space that they gave us was in the center of their career and university transfer area. It had windows all around it. When students walk into that hall, the first thing they see is the transfer center and CAC and the smiling faces of the people who are staffing it. So it is staffed on a rotation, but the students have access to the calendar to see when people will be there. And we think that as we expand that throughout the county, it really will help to connect students with specific people at the college. And rather than having the tabling type recruitment that we might remember from our high schools or events that we've gone to, really having targeted reasons for being in the school and meeting with students specifically for admissions purposes, for financial aid purposes, for academic programming, and sharing the different great things that we have at the college. So we definitely anticipate an increase in student enrollment from those, as well as really opening up the number of parent nights that we've had. We go back and forth. I remember when I first started at CAC, it was, we need to focus on the student. Don't focus on the parents. They're adults. They're coming to school. Focus on the student. And we realized that for so many of our students, and especially our first generation college students, their support is their family. So involving their family and helping to educate them on the needs for students in college and what it's going to be like in college and what they might need and how they might be able to succeed, we think that we'll have a much better impact on the students' overall performance. And visibility. We know that we also get sometimes parents who come in and say, hey, I heard about this program and I think I want to take a class. So those will be great things. The creation of the Vaquero Rally Days, which is bringing students on our campus. Schools are really getting excited about this. We're starting to see an uptick in the high schools that are willing to transport their students. So we went through kind of a phase where the high schools were saying, hey, we don't have the funding to bring students on campus, but they're seeing the benefit and they're seeing the fact that rather than having multiple events that they're bringing students to, we say, hey, we've got this really one great event. If you can commit to coming to this one great event with your seniors or your juniors, they'll really benefit from the services that we'll be able to provide and the exposure they'll have to all of our academic programs. Lots of things with social media related to financial aid, a new financial aid mobile app. Yay, that was exciting. Vaquero Chat, ways of students being able to chat online and get questions answered, or faculty or staff or community members that have questions. And just additional assistance with completing things like the FAFSA. Department of Ed was really helpful in the fact that they reduced the number of steps in the FAFSA a couple years ago. That's been great. But it still is a process that's brand new to many of our students. The things that we have planned coming in the future, we're really looking at planning strategically for our high school students. And this is a conversation that has just begun. But in all of the small pockets that we've been talking about it in preparation for the larger conversation, we're really excited about being able to potentially offer a map for our high school students to say, you may not want to come to to CAC after graduation. Maybe that's not quite where you want to be at this point, but while you're in high school, we want to develop a map that can show you how to earn a certificate or how to earn your AJEC or complete something opposed to just taking random classes. So really planning strategically as to how we can show our students how they can be successful while they're in high school, with the hopes that, of course, once they get here and they're successful in our courses and see what we have to offer, they'll stay anyway. So that's the hope. Redesigning of high school programming, I just said that. Removing of process barriers. So we've really been listening to faculty, staff, students who say, man, these processes, instead of doing these 3 things, why couldn't I just do this one? So really look at removing some of those barriers. Let's see, increasing our partnership with marketing and PR. I know we're working to really have academic programs continue to work with recruitment and marketing to get the word out to our communities. And I think those are some of the big things. I probably talked longer than I normally do, but this is an exciting one. And I think we have a lot of great things coming in the future that will help to provide even more access to the students within our county. So any questions for me before Dr. Gilliland comes up?
No questions.
All right, Dr. Gilliland.
afternoon, President Gibson, members of the board, Dr. Elliott, faculty, staff, guests. Continuing on, I am reporting on just two pieces of this outcome, 2.5 and 2.6. And I'm not going to go back to that initial slide, so we'll just move forward from this. 2.5 looks at the percentage of credit hours that our students earn via alternate delivery. And let me get to that. And there we go. Alternate delivery includes online classes, fully online classes. It includes our hybrid offerings, which offer some face time and then a percentage of the class online, which varies in terms of how that's organized. And then we have a technology that's been in use at the college for a long time, ITV, which uses an older Polycom technology, but where you can actually see the professor or the instructor, though the person is broadcasting remotely to a number of the campuses, and ideally they do visit all the campuses during the course of the semester. So it's kind of a substitute for face-to-face when we are so spread across this large geographic territory, which is something that I think we've struggled with as a college. We want to provide all the services to all of our locations, but we have little pockets where sometimes we have just a few students who need something. So that's been the method we've used in the past, and I'll say something a little bit more about where we're going with that. Anyway, we have traditionally offered a fairly large amount of courses via this alternative delivery. The board has set a goal for us of 55%, and you can see that across the board, both CAC and the Arizona Community Colleges tend to hang out around 65% of their offerings in those alternate modalities. And I want to say that I think that in some cases, these are not necessarily the preferred modalities for a lot of students. They are for some. There's some students who have very, very busy regular daytime schedules, have families, have lots of reasons why they can't come into a campus, and they are looking specifically for those online classes in particular. But we also have a number of our students who use an online or a hybrid class or some other alternative to supplement their schedule. So they're doing some face-to-face classes, and they're taking maybe one online class to round things out, just to make that schedule work. And again, with our multiple centers and campuses, this just makes things functional for us. So we're always trying to think of better ways to manage all of that, but we do end up with a number of people who are taking maybe at least one online or hybrid class as a part of their total mix. So I think going forward, we foresee us holding fairly steady in that regard. So our goal is to try to find a way to make sure that those are positive experiences for students, that they're not just in an online class by default and not succeeding. We want to make sure that they're getting that same quality of education that they would get in a regular face-to-face setting. So anyway, that's the 65%, but we're definitely meeting the board goals. And so then the other piece of it is to meet our own strategic goals of making sure that students succeed in those settings. And I'll speak more about that in just a moment. The second outcome that I want to report about is the number of four-year pathways in Pinal County. This is actually a slight addition or a change in the way we're reporting in this particular monitoring report, but we realize that it's very important for many of our students to not only obtain a certificate or associate's degree from Central Arizona College, but to continue their education in some form beyond us. And for many of our residents, the goal is not to leave the county. They want to stay here for family reasons, for work reasons, or for many other reasons. And it turns out that there are alternatives for them to continue that education right here in Pinal County. We have been working over the past number of years to try to increase those four-year pathways for our students. This year, the board set a goal for us of 10 pathways to complete a four-year degree while staying in Pinal County. And I'm very happy to report that we actually met that goal this year. So that doesn't mean we are going to stop there. We're going to continue to try to create those partnerships and reach out and make sure that our students have access to quality education continuing on from CAC, so that this becomes a longer term process. I will just mention that some of those partnerships include concurrent programs. For example, in our nursing program, we have two actually concurrent associate degree in nursing and bachelor's degree in nursing programs, so that a student, once they are accepted in our nursing program, if they test at a high enough level, they have the right GPA, they are able to be admitted simultaneously to a 4-year program and graduate with both their associates and their bachelor's degree in nursing at the same time. These are great programs, and we did have a number of graduates in the last nursing cohort who achieved that. We have other pathways that are also really, really beneficial for our students. We have several of those pathways that allow students to stay at Central Arizona College for 90 credits instead of 60 credits and then transfer on to a 4-year institution. These are primarily with Northern Arizona University, to transfer on and take 30 more credits at that 4-year level, staying in place either with some on-site classes or some online or some blend, but completing that 4-year degree right here in Pinal County. So these are really great innovative programs, and I think add a lot of value to our county and to what people can achieve here. You don't have to necessarily leave if that's not something that you want to do or that your program doesn't require. So anyway, good news that we're meeting those goals. We will continue to try to improve those and reach out and create more such partnerships. Oops, sorry. Okay, so I thought there was a list of outcomes at the end. Dr. Cardenas actually spoke about a lot of our recent improvements, both in enrollment and reaching out to students and creating partnerships with high schools and with other groups, and also some of our planned improvements. And so I'm not going to repeat most of those. A lot of these go across the board. And I just want to say 2 quick things. One is that from the faculty academic side, one of the things that we're really looking to do is to improve those experiences both in our regular classrooms and also especially in our alternative deliveries. We had created a distance education faculty training program, which we had launched a couple of years ago. It was going along very well. People got some excellent training. We had some changes in personnel and also we're rethinking some of those processes. In the meantime, we do have an online version people can pursue, but we are looking at recreating that faculty training. We also are looking at some changing technologies in those alternative deliveries, and that's just something we have to stay abreast of the technology. So we are going to be moving from our current version of our learning management system, Blackboard, to a Blackboard Ultra, which gives us a lot more options, but we are still sorting out some glitches with that, talking to all of the other things we interface with. And we've started already providing faculty training starting at our All College Day this year, but continuing to provide that training is something that we need to roll out over the rest of this year for when we're ready to launch. We did have an initial launch date of spring 2020. It looks like that's being pushed back to the end of that semester, so we'll have a little bit more time for training. But that's definitely a high priority. And then the other technology piece that we are moving to change, I mentioned our ITV system, which is based on very expensive and older, wonderful for the many years we've used it, the Polycom system. This kind of having FaceTime across the district with some distance component is something that's still desirable, but we're looking at a lot of other alternatives like synchronous online and some other technologies. So rolling those out, getting all the training in place, making sure everybody knows, what's going to be available and how we're going to use those is right there in our current improvements planning, but like rolling it out very quickly, improvement area. So just that training piece. And then I will say the second thing I wanted to say is that we've had so much more conversation across the board between the student services, especially advising, and the various parts of that division and the academic division, so that we're getting a lot of good feedback about, for example, what high school students who want to finish an AJAC before they complete their high school degree, what kinds of courses are they looking to take? What are their preferences? So we can perhaps build those into schedules. So we're having a lot more conversation about those. We're doing collective outreaches to our high school areas about that. We're doing a lot more conversation with people about what are the exact courses that are perhaps missing. And we are launching and working on a master scheduling program as well, so that we're hoping to kind of put some better programming into place to meet the needs of all of our students and, to try to do that in the best possible way. So I will stop there. Any questions for me about those 2 pieces?
Question.
You said something that confused me, and that's fairly easy to do. So with regard to the 2.5 alternative delivery, I thought I understood you to say that we're meeting board goal, but that doesn't seem to be what the chart says.
For the
It shows a goal of 55, and we're at 69.
okay, so we are exceeding the board goal. That may not be a good thing,
Okay,
but
so
the board would like to have 55% of our credit hours earned via alternative delivery. So we're exceeding that. So perhaps that's not a good thing. Maybe we need to bring that back down.
right,
Um,
because it shows good is down towards
okay,
55
all right, you're
now.
right. I didn't pay attention to that. I mean, I did pay attention to that arrow, but so what I meant is we're above that mark. We've certainly got adequate classes. Maybe we have too many. And that's certainly something to look at. My thought is we are probably going to continue to have a little bit higher number of those alternative delivery courses just because of the nature of our geography. Although, we're working to right size those face-to-face courses as well and make sure that those are all in place and available to our students. One of the difficulties we've had that sometimes causes us to cancel a face-to-face class is simply low numbers. If we offer a course only at one of our smaller campuses, sometimes there's just not critical mass for that. So sometimes those alternative deliveries allow us to offer something across the district that will pick up 2 students at Maricopa, 3 students at Santan, a couple of students at Superstition Mountain, whereas a full-blown class on that campus may or may not make. We're always working with that to try to make that a better thing. So
Thank you.
yes, you're right. I will correct that and say that we have overshot the board's goal and, probably need to right size that a little bit more.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We've added a new item returned a new item to the agenda, call to the board. Call to the board is an opportunity for members of the board to make general comments and to express any ideas or thoughts or feelings that they might have at this time. So I would ask if the members of the board have any comments they'd like to make under call to the board.
I would like to mention yesterday the CAC Connect that was done at the Apache Junction High School. And I share your excitement because there was quite a number of students that were there. Perhaps I should turn that on. There's quite a few students that were there, and they all seem pretty excited about it, and it is a very, very good location. So that to me is an exciting program because that's what's going to generate a lot of interest, particularly as we get into more high schools. So, great program.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I'll echo what my colleague had mentioned about CAC Connect just in Maricopa, which was the first one. To see the informal conversations that are going on, to see the excitement in the kids. When I was in high school, I was kind of afraid of college, but here we're bringing college to them, and it's not as foreign, not as intimidating as maybe it was years ago. And I think that's a good thing. The more they see the CSC logo, and the more the parents understand that we have now 10 4-year degrees that they can get within Pinal County, I think that's going to add to the appeal of CAC overall. So I think those are great, and I understand that there's more CAC Connects to be added, so that's even more great news.
Thank you.
One more.
Yes, please.
Earlier in our meeting, it was mentioned that math department doesn't always get an opportunity to speak before the board. I'd like to think that we have an open invitation, and we'd like to hear from them as often as they can spare the moments. That's it.
As often as they can muster the numbers.
Yes.
Any other comments? Thank you. We're at the conclusion of our agenda. Our next board meeting will be November the 19th, 2019 at the Superstition Mountain campus. Look forward to seeing people there. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.